just prior to the COVID, people were more focused on the work, the worker, and workplace. But with future-ready organizations, I think the challenge is completely different. We are actually looking, how do I futurize my work? How do I personalize my worker? And how do I humanize my workplace? I guess HR needs a larger role to play in making organization future ready. And definitely, whether you call it recruitment, learning, talent, leadership, engagement, I think it needs to function together in order to bring that context back.
Andy, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
It's been a while. How long has it been, actually? Because you joined us on the panel a while back, right? Like, it's
yeah. I think about 2 months, 3 months now.
Oh, okay. Time flies.
Yeah,
really fast. Where are you? Where you based at the moment yourself?
I'm currently in Dubai. I work out of
Nice.
Dubai, and yeah, it's a beautiful city, amazing people, and a great place to stay.
Yeah. How long you been there now?
I've been in Dubai for almost 7 years now.
Wow.
In the region, about 16 years. So
Wow.
yeah, quite an understanding of the Middle East.
Yeah, you sat here for that long, and have you gotten used to the heat? Oh, you never will get used to it.
We are almost like living, in the heat every time now.
even in the winter, right? It's basically still hot.
Yeah, means we hardly get 2 to 3 months of winter, but it is like Christmas for us.
Before we jump in, Andy, tell everyone a little bit more about your background and your journey to where we are now, and your current role in the organization at Landmark Group.
So currently, I look after the learning and leadership development for the Landmark Group. I am based out of UAE. A little bit about Landmark Group. We are about one of the biggest private Middle East retailers. We operate out of most of the countries out of GCC. And I'm responsible to look after the learning and leadership development for the group. And this entails across all retail, office, function, and warehouse. So, yeah, means interesting portfolio to be in. My background is I have been in learning and development for almost 20 to 22 years now, and specifically in the areas of capability as well as talent. That's my core. I've been in specifically in retail industry, to be honest, and that's where my niche lies. And my interest has always been development, using different technologies to develop, using different methodologies to develop. And I think we are trying to really change people's lives and their careers by doing that. Initially, before my career, I was into sales, but that's for a very short stint, and then I moved into learning as a full-time role. Apart from my education qualification, which is based into mass comm journalism, I have also done my CIPD. I last year graduated out of a course from Nairobi and IE University, which is the GLDP, the Global Leadership Development Program for Chief Learning Officers. And
Congrats.
yeah, it's been quite a journey, I think.
Yeah. Well, it must be quite fascinating because you've seen the full journey of learning and development from in-person classroom learning all the way through to now we're talking about AI. That's right. So, it's almost, it's hard to comprehend when you think about that. Yeah.
And I think we are blessed to be living in this time, honestly.
Yeah.
Because we've actually tried, and I do not know when the transition happened, Chris. When did we actually move from just very focused instructional-led training during COVID to digitize the complete part. And now we are actually looking more into a complete part, which is technology based, peer based, social based learning. And based on that, the preferences of learners have changed, the preference of the workplace has changed. So if I just look at the way it was pre-pandemic, before the COVID, and the way we are doing it now, I think organizations are more agile. They want to be more future ready. And this is called out again in Accenture and LinkedIn reports that just prior to the COVID, people were more focused on the work, the worker, and workplace. But with future ready organizations, I think the challenge is completely different. We are actually looking, how do I futurize my work? How do I personalize my worker? And how do I humanize my workplace? I guess HR needs a larger role to play in making organization future ready. And definitely, whether you call it recruitment, learning, talent, leadership, engagement, uh, I think it needs to function together in order to bring that context back.
Yeah. They're also
Interesting.
no, I love the way you made the distinction between those two. Is
Yeah.
and but part of that, and it leads onto one of the questions we had here, was it requires a quite a big mindset shift, right?
Yeah.
Could you talk to that a
Yeah.
little bit more?
So I think so the mindset shift, when we talk about it, I think we always talk about it from a leader's lens or from a people's lens. I think it's a higher in order. I think it's the organization lens first, that we need to make it future ready, and therefore this is the critical mindset shift which needs to happen. In my opinion and in my experience, mindset shift between a frontline and a middle manager cannot happen if the mindset shift has not happened in at the organization level or at the leader level. I think we are pretty good at that, and we make sure that any kind of mindset shift which requires awareness. One, it requires, where are we going, what are we heading towards, why are we doing to rather how are we doing and what are we doing. And the why starts with thinking about why are we doing it, where it is going to take us. And therefore the mindset shift starts from there. And once the organization is aligned, leaders aligned, I think people, managers, just follow through that. So yeah, so mindset shift is really really critical to make these changes. I can give you a small example. So traditionally, we work out of a country which also has a second language, which is Arabic. Most of our content which we deploy, design, are mostly in English, because that's how the uh, partners would work. For the last couple of years, this was done in a very traditional way, using traditional agencies, partners, translators, and all of that. We've recently deployed a AI technology which actually not only translates, but actually can translate voice modulations, videos, content by just a photo. So you can have my photo. I can just talk about how do I make an omelette, and that entire content can be replicated in Arabic in various forms. So I think the technology plays a critical role. But I think somewhere there needs to really have the awareness that this is possible. I think it's a lot to do with awareness. And the moment you have awareness, I think the shift has already happened.
Yeah, there's awareness and there's also fear.
Yeah.
Right. So, because I speak to recruiters and I speak to L&D teams, and some of their employees are almost hesitant to adopt this technology because they feel like they're going to be replaced. So we can't,
Yeah.
like that's something I hear, and the truth is, some people will be, right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you don't need a whole team of translators now. Like that's gone.
Correct.
I
Correct.
mean, like, there's no way, like, there's no easy way around that. The technology can do that. What would take typically weeks and months can be done instantaneously. We spoke just before the show, right? I was showing examples of Atlas being able to do that. So the harsh reality is there will be roles that that will be obsolete, but on the other side, there'll be other roles that they're now you'll be able to unleash the full potential of that role because AI can do a lot of that heavy lifting, a lot of that administrative tasks, so you can spend time on the meaningful work, if that makes sense.
Correct. And Chris, I think, a lot happens with fear psychosis, and fear is what uh, your brain tends to adapt first. Uh,
Yeah, for good reason because we used to needed to be able to survive, right?
yes,
So
yes.
for good reason as well. Yeah,
And it's also preparing yourself that how can I actually levitate to the next level, how can I ingest something as an
yeah,
which would raise my awareness and I can do better. uh, I think a classic example is that while AI would take X millions of jobs, which is been talked over all over, I think what it also promises into 10x millions of jobs it's going to create.
yes,
uh,
exactly.
yeah. uh, so are we actually looking at uh, a replacement of tasks versus amplification of tasks? So it's just two mindsets, which is just there. Are we looking at just being speed up the process, or are we looking at the efficiency of that speed as well?
Mm,
So there are two school of thoughts to it. Uh, are we looking at only automation, or are we looking at automation with quality, or automation with very very specific intelligence on how a process and a task is done better? So I think again it boils down to all mindset shifts, and how you are actually taking a technology or even a content or anything.
yeah. When you think about sort of the AI revolution, what are the things that you're seeing that leaders are getting wrong?
Okay. First of all, I think one of the things which leaders tend to understand with AI is that it might solve all your problems. It might increase the speed of a process. Um, but I think we need to clearly demarcate what is a generative AI doing and what is a specialized AI doing. So, and we need to be really, really clear about the process. Uh, Ultimately, it would, whatever inputs I would give, the outputs what I get through probing and through prompts is what I actually get. Now, someone can like write a prompt much better than what I do for a content or for any content, and someone might not. I think just blaming the technology itself is not good. So, one is, how are you evolving with the technology? How are you internalizing the technology in order to get better outputs? That's the first one. Second, while generative AI will give you very, very specific solutions, a specialized AI, which is currently used in medical domains, used in coding, specialized AI, domains, would actually give you much more predictive and prescriptive results than a generative AI.
Mm-hmm.
So I think whenever we are looking at any AI solution or any technology, one of the things which we really need to understand is that what kind of prompts I am giving, what kind of expectation I have from that technology, and am I moving towards more of a generative AI than a more specialized AI? Because there are specialized AI,
Yeah,
but we we tend not to use it because currently it's evolving. It is actually evolving by the years, but what we tend to do is that if that technology does not work for us, I think giving up is not the solution. Working with the technology is what we need to do. So everybody, and I've said this before, everybody wants to get me a best use case for an AI where I can do videos and I can actually validate a content, or I can actually do a content which is validated with different links. While the use case is great and you have multiple use cases, no one wants to be the use case. No one wants to try it and try it and
I
do it
love that. I
themselves.
love that. Yeah, everyone likes a use case, but no one wants to be the use
Yeah.
case. What? So when you brought, one of the challenges, obviously we're going into many organizations with Atlas Copilot, and that part there's kind of two challenges. One is you're right, finding the right use case, and then the other is finding the person who's going to lead that and be the use
Yeah.
case, right? And
Yeah.
and that's sometimes where I'm getting blockers. What was the use
Yeah.
cases that you and the team settled on? Because you mentioned you've implemented an AI. What was the use case that you went to the team with and said, "This is what we're solving for specifically"?
Okay. So, Chris, again, it's a failure story.
Good. That's where we
And
learn the most. That's
yeah,
that's, that's good.
and the reason I wanted to talk about this is that it's really, really important. And that has actually formed the baseline or the benchmark for us for what we are moving forward. We use a lot of mentoring and coaching methodology across our businesses to develop our leaders. One of the technology, I would not like to name the company, is we used an AI based technology mentoring app, which helps us to do something very simple: identify mentors, uh, uh, look at conversations of mentoring, schedule a mentoring conversation, and this all goes between the mentor and mentee. We don't own the process because the process is very personal, it's
Yeah.
very relevant, and it's extremely hyper personalized to that person's development. So we don't control the process. One of the things which we realized, that because of AI, the quality of insights should be amazing. And when we actually deployed the technology, we were more focused on, does the AI do mentor and mentee mapping? And this is a typical use case we are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But over the last 6 to 8 months, when we realized that while the product is good at the front line, I think what we were really, really focusing as an organization is the back end of how those mentoring conversations happen, what were the kind of value of those conversations, and how is the organization heading towards what are some of the 3 or 4 indicators the app couldn't give us. Instead, it was AI. I do not blame the app. I think also it is also the insights that we wanted to also understand. So there are two learnings from it. While AI is the buzzword, understand what your organization needs and whether that technology is going to provide you with those insights. It can be best to another company A versus to another company B. So again, I say use cases can be great for a company A, might not be great for me. It's what you want to actually do with that technology.
Mm.
So we've used a lot of, and since then we try to look at explore, pause, and reflect option. So we explore a technology, we then pause with it and say that how this technology is going to evolve. We go and study a lot about that technology in global global ratings like Fosway Grid and all, to see where that technology is right now. And then we actually go and explore the technology in full scale. What we've also done, Chris, we also tend to do a little bit of competition of that technology to understand, and then we actually take a call. Let me give you a simple example. We are exploring a specific technology in order to do content and do curated journeys. That's one of the technology we are exploring. Globally, we have assessed more than 11 partners, and those more than 11 partners were again based on 4 scales. What was the cost? What was the scale of operation? Are they present in Middle East? And most important, what is the next journey for the next 3 years? So we've had our own way of understanding how does that. And last but not the least, does it solve the problem for me? And if it doesn't, it can be the best technology. All the best with that, it doesn't help us out.
Yeah. No, I love that. You
Yeah.
got to really, because you could solve a million different solutions and have a million different
Yeah.
features, right? But is it solving for this specific problem that we're
Yeah.
having? And I love the fact that you ask about the future roadmap. That's a really
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
thing for everyone listening. Make sure you ask what does that roadmap look like?
Yeah.
And is it important for you that those companies also have flexibility to co-create and collaborate with you, as opposed to here's our off-the-shelf product, good luck, in terms of sort of building features with them, or building as part of that process in terms of a collaborative partner as opposed to an off-the-shelf solution?
So, Chris, we do not go with off-the-shelf solutions. All the best of luck to the guys who want to stick to off-the-shelf solution. It's not going to work for you.
That was pretty harsh, but I love it. It's true. It's true. No, so the answer is yes. Then you prefer to work with a company and
Yeah,
and work specifically
yeah.
with them.
And, and Chris, with most of the partners, I think we do not squeeze them on cost. We are okay with the cost. I think what we really position is let's co-create,
Yep.
because when we co-create we are actually having a whiteboard where we can tell you what is our wish list, and then we work with that wish list with their roadmap. So we are also sensitive that some of these companies or agencies are also evolving in the process, and those evolvement requires real good funding. So while we are parallelly working with them, we are also conscious of the fact that what's my need for the first year, what is going to be my need for the second year, and what is going to be my need for the third year. And then we co-create along with the partners. Some
I
of
love
these
that.
partners really worked at scale, and over a period of time before even we predict what's going wrong, they are able to easily assess. And now the way we look at it, they said, no, actually this is a great solution. If I do this, I would have another 10 partners working with
Yeah,
me.
because most, and then that's the kind of decision making from their point of view. Same for me, right? Is this a feature that my other partners are going to want? And most of the
Yeah.
time it is. So I'm like,
Yes.
obviously I have to be careful. I can't make everyone's dreams come true, otherwise you get nothing done. But most of the time, in terms of our integrations, our roadmap, that's informed by co-creating with all of the companies that we're working with right now, which is really exciting as well. To
Yeah.
be honest, to be on that journey. One of the challenges that many of our listeners are facing, and I'd love to get your advice on this, is they're struggling to get the buy-in internally.
Yeah.
Who needs to be in that room? Who did you engage in the business to get this across the line? Because many of them are getting blocked. They have the money.
Yeah.
They want to do it. This is not a money and can I do it. This is not a want or a do I have the money. Like I'm speaking to CHROs, love the product, Chris. We have the budget, and then they get blocked. By someone or a function
Yeah.
internally. Who needs to be in the room to make this work? What would your advice be to people listening?
So, so Chris, any such technology, uh, we generally work with a working group, and these working group are people who would actually essentially use the content or use the technology. So, and I'm talking it from a center of excellence perspective, where we have 11 countries, we have 11 brands, just to name the complexity with a matrixed organization. So what we do, we actually take decisions as a working committee. There is a project sponsor, there would be a sponsor who would actually finally take a decision, but that gets amplified when 6 or 7 business entities who would use it would come and endorse the fact and said, listen, I'm great, I've been through the process, I've seen the demos, I have seen what the technology can provide, and this is what's going to levitate our results from X to Y. And we are very clear about it. And then that conversation actually becomes very easy, very fluid, and makes complete sense. Because generally what people tend to do, or not just typecasting it, is that uh, I know the technology is good, I know it's going to give me amazing results from my function, for my role, for my department, but there is no alignment with other people.
Yeah,
Now, when there is no alignment, it might be the best technology, but the vision is not clear with your stakeholders who are going to use the technology. Now, everybody talks about adoption. The biggest word in technology is adoption. How are people adopting to it? You do not need to go after adoption if at the onset you have clearly clarified the process that by doing this, this is where we are, this is where we want to move. And the adoption actually then becomes seamless. You would have problem child, I think, on the process is just 20%. When they see the other people into the bus, they generally also want to catch the bus.
yeah. No, I love that.
So it's alignment is a key word, alignment, and creative working council and
Do you have an
sponsor.
AI ethics council as well? Do you have that set up, something like that, or is that part of the same council?
As of now, this is completely run by our digital teams. We have our legal teams. We have our data protection
So
team,
they're
and
all
anything.
they're all present in that conversation.
Yes, yes. In fact, when we actually look at a technology or we
Yeah.
look at anything, we actually go past them. We go really, really right way of even agreeing to some legal compliances,
Mm-hmm.
which is really, really mandated, like something like data protection.
Sure.
You would never move into any technology without having that covered.
Yeah.
So that's one example of how do we want to do it. Plus the security within our organization, I think, is clear. So we do all these check and balances, and all of these people are part of the conversation even before we put a proposal.
So you mentioned at the beginning, then, what is where do you see the future of the LND function, and how you're leveraging this moving forward? You mentioned already a couple of use cases. What are some of the
Yeah,
other ideas and use cases that you and the team have specifically to, especially in a frontline worker environment where you've got many of your employees
yeah,
in the retail environment? You need a solution that can scale, right?
yeah.
To meet them where they're at.
Yeah. So I think, Chris, two things. I think first of all, it's deskless workers. The
Yes.
only hardware access they would have is the device. So whatever technology you are getting into, it has to be SSO based. It has to be single sign-on. You cannot expect them to go to 5 apps connect. You're
Yeah.
actually making their life more complicated by doing that. Secondly, it all has to be integrated into one tech stack. The reason I'm saying that is that whether you have your email or you have your Slack or you have your Teams, all of these techs needs to be integrated with that. So technology needs to make it easy for the user to use the technology. That's the first thing we look at any tech.
We should double click on that because I want to make sure everyone understands the importance of that. So the very first request we got, to your point, Chris, I need this
Yeah.
inside of my Teams and then I need it inside of my Slack. And I was like, and
Yes.
because it needs to be in the flow of work, you can't add another
Correct.
app. You can't add
Correct.
another one on top of the. I think the average employee has something like 20 something apps at work, which is
Correct.
kind of crazy as well. So that's really important.
Yeah.
Whatever you choose, that it shows up in your existing communication tools in the flow of work, because then they get
Yeah.
used. They actually get used.
Correct.
Was it that way? So good, great
Yeah.
point.
Uh, Secondly, I think we are all very busy, and the entire business environment is going to get busier. So there is a requirement of actually identifying a learning time, and we are now trying to get to that. But why is a learning time required? Because I think for an average learner to focus on anything or learn during their work time actually also commits to the fact that this learning is really important for you to perform in your job. You cannot dissect both. You want people to be capable and you do not want them to learn. So one of the elements we look at is dedicated learning time. The third element, I think, which is very, very important, is not too long content, uh, user generated content. I think that's one thing which is really coming up. We are trying to explore it. But for example, how do I run a cash till or how do I do a VM in a store? My person who's doing it at the front
They
line
know better
is,
than everyone else.
they
Yeah.
know better than anyone else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think user generated content is going to be really, really, really going to amplify the game over the next few years. But I think what's your content seed time is really important. You cannot have a user generated content
And the
which is more than
quality,
20 minutes.
and
And the quality,
yeah,
right?
it's like it's so, because you almost want them to like selfie camera film.
Yeah,
This is how you do it, and it's like that's
yeah,
not. But then it's like, okay, how long does that? How, if you have an update to that process, but that content's still in the system, how do you
yeah,
know that that's out of date content? So then it gets a bit. It's a tough one.
correct.
Yeah, it's a
And,
tough one.
and there has to be a validation process, and then it has to be a combination. It has to be a
Yeah.
combination of blended learning, I guess. But I think the last most important point which we are trying to focus a lot now is that training and engagement cannot be two separate paths. So while people are actually going through any kind of intervention, I think what follows through is the kind of engagement you create around that content, around that learning. And it can be a reward and award mechanism. It can be uh, just engagement, doing through a leaderboard. But how are you actually creating a sense of competition in learning, where learners are learning fast, they are learning through each other, and there is a sense of purpose in all of that, being done at one time at the same place. So I think we are trying to really look at uh, not just learning, but also on engagement. And
Yeah.
uh, I think it all boils down to what you're trying to do with that learning. What's your results? Are you actually doing it for pure play capability development? Are you creating a succession bench? Are you actually creating someone to take on a new role, or is it an event you are preparing for? So it's the results which matter, and based on that, you accordingly tailor make your methodologies.
Yeah. How has this changed the type of skills that you're hiring in your team? Like, for example, I've seen many L&D teams that now have a prompt engineer in
Yeah,
their
yeah,
team, which
yeah,
which is incredible. Oh, many HR leaders I speak to now, they've got a dedicated, they've got their Workday agent, they've got their Visio agent they've turned on, they've turned on their ServiceNow agent. Now they've got 7 agents that
yeah, yeah,
they have in their tech stack, right? And so they're like, we need someone whose dedicated role is to make sure we're overseeing this.
yeah.
And it's kind of like a half of HR operations and half having sort of prompt engineering experience to understand. It's a very complete new set of skills that need to exist in the team.
Absolutely. I think one of the thing which we are really looking um, in our portfolio is how are you actually managing your stakeholders? Because that's critical. It's like, what content, how do I prioritize my content, what kind of content goes off the shelf, because we are in retail, so the interventions are really periodic. It's like very seismic, to be very honest. So it's really every week falls through the month, and so on and so forth. So uh, you need to be really closer to your business in order to understand. So more than having the necessary skills of training, I think one of the things which we are really looking is how are you actually managing your stakeholders. So that's one part. Second, how is your fluency to get adapted to any technology? We do not know what kind of technology we'll take now, and we do not know what kind of technology we're going to take in the next 3 years. But how good are you actually looking at technology? There's a very funny way we do that. We also look at people who are playing games, what kind of games they play, what kind of levels they are in, what do they like about the game, what kind of content they look at the games. It's a very funny way of looking at it, but what we are actually trying to get is how are they looking at the overall purpose of that technology. Third, I think one of the things which we have really started changing is how are they looking at data, how are they looking at interpreting that data, because for us that is mission critical. How are they looking at consolidating a data at one end, how are they presenting the data, what are the insights and observations they are getting out of these programs, and how does that shape up. We are yet not there, Chris, but we are trying to make a lot of changes in this specific area. Apart from you being an amazing facilitator, you being able to understand content,
Yeah.
and yeah. So I think these 2 or 3 skills is what we
No
are looking,
surprise.
apart from you being there.
Yeah. One of the most, we've got kind of like these predefined use cases and predefined prompts inside of Atlas. And
Yeah,
one of the most used, which no surprise, is data literacy.
yeah.
So in the application, we can measure and see kind of what all the questions that the HR leaders in their teams are asking. A lot around data literacy, AI, of course, etc. But that's kind of like in the top 3, the data literacy
Yeah,
piece.
yeah.
No surprise.
Chris, one of the thing is that there's a lot of conversation and seat at the table. that conversation
We're
keeps
still
on.
having that one after 20 years
Uh,
that
it,
I've been
it's
doing
still
it.
it's still mushrooming. I think the context is extremely simple. Actually, talk to the people who are sitting at the seat in their language. And I think data is one thing which is very insightful. It gives you very, very predictive and prescriptive information. If you are able to summarize that, it makes life easy for everyone.
Yeah. Last question before I let you go, because I could talk to you forever. Um,
Yeah.
I know you're still on this journey of the evolution of AI and digital transformation, but what advice would you give to people that may be just starting their journey? What would be your parting advice to them?
Okay. One is what looks good may not be good. Uh, you need to analyze it from your business context. That is the first piece. So please analyze what is your business requirement, and then fit the technology to that context. Do not do it the other way around. That's the first context. Second, if you're actually getting into looking at really changing the technology landscape, please understand that in the next 2 to 3 years, it might hit a plateau. So you need to really focus on uh, what's the roadmap of the development of that technology. That is really, really critical. If you do not have the visibility of that roadmap, you have bought a very expensive technology, and you've realized that in next 2 years the technology is not moving, and that then the technology is of no use for you.
Yeah.
Third, speak to a couple of your peers. I think it's really important. It's always good to deep dive and check in. If someone is using a piece of technology, more than what are the features, benefits, talk about challenges and support they require in order to, look at it, and how is it business relevant. Leave it with three thoughts only in this one.
Yeah. No, I love all of those. And do you literally just reach out to people? Do you ask the vendor for referrals? Say, hey, who are some of the other customers? I want to speak to them. Like, how do you
Yeah.
approach that? Yeah, just literally ask them.
Yeah, so I do a bit of both. I try to first reach out to my network, which is fairly decent in LinkedIn and across. I try to reach out to their network to understand who's currently using a set of technology. Second, I also ask their partners to give me an overview. But my first preference is reach out to people whom you know who are currently using the technology. I think sometimes the partner
They feed you the
element
best
actually.
ones, right?
Yeah.
So like, here's our most happy customers, right? So I love that's why I double clicked on that, because I think, and I'm happy you said it, right? Don't be afraid to reach out to, drop them a message on LinkedIn, message your network.
Yeah.
People really want to help, right? So don't be afraid of, like, if you see those logos on the website of that partner, you can just message those people on LinkedIn, their heads of learning, their HR team, and say, hey, I'm looking to implement this. What are your thoughts, right? You'll be surprised how
Yeah.
many people come back to you. Yeah.
Yeah. And Chris, there is one thing which is really worked. I used to always get input from a peer, like anybody who's a head of learning, anybody who's head of leadership development. And when I used to get input from them, it was like, oh, it's amazing. The technology is really working fine. I have now changed the entire context. I said, can you put me to someone who's actually running this for you?
Yes, because it's not
And I
them.
get to speak to
Yes.
them.
Yes, that's what I meant earlier, right? Because I realized early on I'm speaking to the CHROs every day. Obviously, that's who I interview on the show typically. But I realized they're not the ones using it. And
Yeah.
they're not the ones. They're not the ones owning the process, right? So I had to kind of
Correct.
go down and figure out, like, who is the person who's going to be right. You're so right. It's a very
Yeah.
different conversation
It's
versus
it's
having. Yeah, it's great. It's going well.
and yeah, and Chris, it is a chalk and cheese conversation because it's very, very different. Because
Yeah.
when you are actually using the technology upfront, you are really, really you are. It's open in front of you. You know what are the challenges. You know what's are the support. So that's one top tip I would really just don't get to Andy. Get to someone who's managing that for Andy.
Yeah, the vendors aren't going to like us now. After this. But listen, honestly, it was great chatting with you. I appreciate you coming on the show, and we'll do like a check-in in like 8 months, and you can tell us how you're getting on with some
Yeah,
of.
absolutely.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see the on both sides of that as
Listen,
well. But I appreciate you sharing the journey.
always in, Chris. Always in.
Yeah, thanks for
Just
coming on
like
the show.
just thanks a lot for this. Thanks a lot, Chris.